Welcome to the Deal Champs podcast. I am your co-host, Mr. Strat Daddy. Me and Dean look amazing today because we have our glasses on. Jason's a square, and we didn't tell Mike beforehand. But
I didn't get the memo.
we didn't give Mike the memo. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Quick 10,000 foot view about me. My name's Stratton Brown. I own a 7-figure real estate portfolio. We own a real estate assistant company that helps small business owners get virtual assistants in their company to buy back all that time, right? Because they don't want to be doing all that. I've been in real estate for the last 5 years. And honestly, without real estate, I don't know where I would be. I'm a college dropout. I had no other skills besides football. We have the Captain America, my partner in crime today, Mr. Dean Rogers.
Yeah, baby. What's up, guys? Your other co-host here, Dean Rogers. My story is I got started in the NFL and was living my childhood dream. And then the story you can find other places, but then transitioned into corporate, then got into real estate. Been doing that for 10 years now. We just broke our 600th deal. So we've done 600 deals, have a rental portfolio, almost $10 million, and coaching students through the wholesaling playbook, how they can get started and grow their business too. You guys can always connect with me at deanrogers.com.
Then we have the lackluster master of hair today. The beard looks solid, no hair, no glasses. I don't know who this guy is. Mr. Jason Pritchard.
What's up, guys? It's your other co-host, Jason Pritchard. Thank you for joining us today. Quick backstory on me. I worked corporate America for 15 years. I burned all the boats and left my job in 2014. Have not looked back since. Since then, we've flipped over 400 houses, own a rental portfolio of over 100 units here in Central California. And my goal and the goal of everybody on this podcast is to try to transfer as many of the skills that we've learned through our real estate investing careers to you guys and give you as much free, valuable information as we can. I'm very excited today to have our special guest and fellow Investor Fuel family member, Mike Hambright, on this call, man. Thanks, Mike, for joining us.
Yeah, excited to be here. I've been waiting for you guys to ask, so I feel honored. Excited to be here. Am I supposed to introduce myself?
Yeah, give us
the fire, bro.
Yeah. So Mike Hambright, I've been a real estate investor since 2008. I kind of refer to myself as a corporate refugee after I say I lost my job, but really was fired from a job that I loved. And that was kind of the last straw. I needed to kind of take my own destiny into my own hands and started off, flipping houses. I flipped several hundred houses in the Dallas-Fort Worth market. And over the years, that's turned into bolt-ons from rental portfolio of single-family houses, ultimately a rental portfolio of large multifamily syndications, coaching, some service businesses, and lots of other stuff, and a bunch of stuff that has come and gone as well. But at this point, I pretty much, financially free in every definition of the word. I don't say that to brag, but it allows me to do what I really love, which is to hang out with folks like on this show and on some level advise, mentor, and sometimes just hang out and bullshit.
And he's been super helpful to us. If you guys didn't know, he was a power user on Asana back before Asana was cool.
Wow.
That's true.
Oh, yeah.
That's true. My wife has a history of saying, I want to use this tool. And I'm like, I've never even heard of that before. And then everybody's using it. So that actually is true of Asana. We probably were using that for I bet like 12 to 15 years at this point. Like
Wow.
Didn't know anybody. Showed a few people that people that are influential, and now everybody seems to use it. And Podio, actually, there was almost nobody using Podio, and I was like, never heard of it. When I started, there were no CRMs. We were using Excel or some bastardized contact manager. There literally was not a single CRM for real estate investing. So, hence all the gray hair that you guys see here that wasn't always there.
I love it. And an amazing marketer who's helped us out a lot. If you guys didn't know and you guys want to reach out to him, another amazing marketer. Mike, bro, how did you get into the space? And because I think Jason's the only one who really transitioned from corporate.
Yeah.
And you went full-fledged over here all the way to like what you built.
Yeah. I'll say this, like none of it was planned. It's just kind of happened. And it's just like, you just, hit a point and you're like, well, I'm going to go left now. And then I'm going to go right. And then I'm going to go left. And, but it really started with, I had a job that I really loved. And, Fortune 500 company, $5 billion company that doesn't even exist anymore. And at one point, my boss was the CEO of the company. Actually, he got fired, and it was a really big deal because it was a really big company. And then I was his outspoken right-hand man. And so shortly thereafter, they're like, "Oh, what are you still doing here? Like, you got to go too." And it was the type of job that literally, I mean, I was young, right? At the time, I was probably late 20s, maybe 30ish. And it was the type of job that I thought, I'm going to be here for my whole career, right? Because I was kind of being groomed for something much bigger, but I was being groomed by a guy that lost his job, and therefore nobody else had the same vision that he had when the time came. And then I went to work for a startup. It was a startup that grew really fast from nothing to 500 million a year in sales, and we were flying really high. And then all of a sudden, the company filed for bankruptcy. I was only there for 18 months, and at the time, my wife, who was making more money than me as a consultant, and she used to be an investment banker on Wall Street, left her job to support me going to this other company, this startup. And then we got pregnant with my son, who's now 16, but at the time we were just pregnant. So he was born, and that company filed for bankruptcy 2 months after he was born. And we were went from dual income to no income. And it was just what the hell are we going to do now? And at that point, it was a soft spot in the job market. And we had moved to Washington, D.C. Actually, I live in Dallas now. And we still had our house in Dallas. My wife's family's all in Dallas. So we knew we were going to come back to the Dallas area. But it was just what are we going to do? Are we going to just keep – I'm the type of guy that works really hard no matter what I do. And at that point, I'd worked really hard for other people to build their businesses. And it was just this realization of why don't we do something on our own so we have some control, And so, of course, I've worked harder than I've ever worked before over the last 15 years. But it was this sense of control, of being able to control my own destiny and not being worried about whether I'm going to get fired or not. It was academic early on. And now in hindsight, it looks like it was all planned out, but none of it's been planned out,
Mike, was that startup in the real estate space, or was it still completely?
No. It was retail. So mostly retail type stuff. That was a cell phone retailer, an online cell phone retailer.
Wow.
Yeah. I know. I'll say this. Growing up, my dad and my stepdad, people in my family were very handy, building stuff, refinishing the basement, all that stuff. When I was in high school, I worked for 4 years. I worked for Menards, which is, if you're from the Midwest, it's basically third behind Home Depot and Lowe's, and Menards is a pretty huge operation, but mostly in the Midwest. And so I worked in a large, Home Depot type place and saw people building stuff, was always interested in that. I've always been interested in real estate, watching some early shows like Fix This House or This Old House, or I'm so old now, I don't remember the name of it. But I was always interested in that. But, early on, never had the money to do anything, and then never had the time. And then when I lost my job, I still didn't have the money, but I did have the time. And so I just found a way to make it happen.
I think what's interesting too is that timing was 2008. Is that right? Or sometime around that?
Started in the summer of 2008. Yeah. That was the other thing is we were running in and everybody else was running away. It's a time now where there's a lot of people leaving the industry. They think you're crazy. We were just so naive that we didn't know what we didn't know, but we didn't have any bad habits. We didn't have, a bunch of inventory that we'd overpaid for. We did have access to some capital. So we had a little bit of family and friend money. And then we got an introduction to a bank that banks just weren't lending on real estate at the time. But we found somebody that let us kind of stick our toe in the door. So we were able to, do some rehabs and stuff like that. So actually our very first year, let's say 2009 kind of calendar year, because we started really late. I think we bought our first house in October or November of 2008. So 2009, we actually flipped 65 houses in Dallas with
holy shit,
no previous experience, but we were just naive enough to run into the fire, and just be nobody can stop us now.
In the middle of
what were you doing to find all those deals during that time?
Direct to seller marketing, which is exactly what I do now. I mean, we run an agency now. So from the very beginning, I think it's interesting because over the years, I've changed my attitude a little bit. I used to kind of poo-poo on, because my wife and I met in grad school. We got our MBAs from the University of Texas in Austin. And, we had a bunch of experience, and we used to I used to say, like, I didn't need to do any of that stuff. I didn't, corporate America was a waste of time, like all those things. But the truth is there's a lot of lessons that I learned about how to run a real business, right? And so there's a lot of lessons that I take away from that now that I know have helped me, even though I poo-pooed it early on. But the reality is, you understand the value of having a team, building team, putting systems and processes in place, and having capital to do things like lead generation.
2008 and 9. Go ahead, Mike.
No, that wasn't me. That was.
No, did you get an MBA? Damn it, the fingers.
I'll go since I'm following the rules, and Stratton, you can wait because you keep cutting me off. So I was going to say, let's keep the conversation going from that 2008-9 period. It doesn't seem like that long ago, but the self-education process is way different then than it was now, right? I mean, there's no YouTube University, there's no social media. Like, what was it like for you in that time period, just diving into the business? Did you have to go to a seminar to learn? Did you have to JV with somebody? Were there RIAs back then? Like, what was that process like for a brand new
The
investor?
RIAs were way more prominent and way more kind of organized. Like that's where you went for education, And so definitely went to some kind of boot camps and stuff like that. I surrounded myself with a couple of other people. I had a mentor that owns a ton of, actually was a guy that was my accountant, previous to real estate in corporate America. And then I found out, like, along the way, this guy owns, at the time he owned like 2,000 doors in Dallas that he'd been buying since like 1980. So this guy really was a real estate tycoon, and he still is. And I wasn't doing anything in real estate, and he was just, he also owned an accounting firm. And so he would do our taxes for my crappy little corporate job, And then when I got into real estate, I was like, oh, we already have an accountant that we could use because this guy does real estate, but I didn't really know all the details. And then started to talk to him, and definitely got some lessons there. But surrounded myself with a few people that I knew with new stuff. But back then it felt like, and it's probably not super different now. I mean, guys like you guys are very different. You're in your market sharing a lot of stuff, but back then it felt like people were less likely to share stuff because it was like, this is my competition, right? But no, a lot of it was just trial and error. But you're right. There were no podcasts. There was very little social media activity, and it was just, jumping into the fire and learning.
So did you join any type of education, Mike, or is it all RIAs?
No, I've bought some coaching over the years, but it was very different. I mean, it was just, the quality is way better now than back then.
Okay.
But yeah, but certainly now, I mean, I literally, now I spend, well over 6 figures a year on education and training and proximity and stuff like that, just because the value is so high,
So what are the type of things you focus on now? I think we're all big believers of personal development, continuing your education and learning. I'd be curious because you educate and teach a lot of people and have your own mentorship programs and masterminds. What is the type of information you're seeking out in the rooms that you like to put yourself in?
You know what? It's probably more of trying to become a better leader, and also just doing some soul searching about what is it all for and why do I want to do this anyway, right? Because I've kind of realized that I'm not saying this to brag, but I don't really have to do any of this shit anymore. So once you get to that point, it's like, what's my why? And it can't be something that I just made up. It's got to be something real, right? And so I actually went to Tony Robbins' UPW over the past 4 days, or Thursday through Sunday of last week. And it was like super insightful. And I'm just like, I need more of that, because it's really digging deep into what's the passion that drives you forward. Right. And so I have plenty to learn in every area, but I think for me, it's more of learning, like, why do I want to do all this? I mean, I clearly enjoy impacting people. I love building friendships with high achievers and things like that. But I think it's this continuous focus on what's it all for and how can I really impact people? And honestly, the tactics of real estate are easier than the mindset of what's it all for, not just for myself, but for the people that I surround myself with. I mean, if people are asking me how to do something or whatever, it's usually like, why do you want to even do that? Because if you don't know that, then the rest doesn't matter. It'll be short lived. So yeah, I think it's just more trying to become a better, more fulfilled in my own life, and getting clarity on why I'm doing what I do, so that it's not short lived and I can kind of go the distance. Right.
Mike, I personally think you're a dude who just likes to build stuff. That's like
Yeah.
whenever I
Oh, there's no
you
doubt.
love to build shit. You're
Yeah,
always
there's no doubt.
building something new and releasing something new and cool that you think, like, every time I talk to you, you have like a new variation of what you're doing and like re-releasing it, or like the agency, how you started. Like every time it's something new. That's what I respect about you, is you're always like going, and like it seems like you're just having fun. You're just like, oh yeah, well, I got this, and we're about to pop this out.
I'll say this, and this is the truth. And I know we've had these conversations before. You're like, what are you doing that's new? And up until a couple of years ago, I would, like, every time somebody talked to me, they're like, what are you doing that's new? Because they knew I was always onto something new. And the truth is over the past couple of years, I really am just trying to innovate inside of what I already do, like Investor Fuel or Investor Machine. I just honestly, I don't need anything new, because it's just a distraction. I have so much opportunity to make an impact and build inside of what I already have, that I'm trying to just innovate, like, internally, if that makes sense, inside of things, because I'm attracted to shiny objects for sure. But I don't need anything new. There's plenty of opportunity for me to build, like, inside of what I've already built.
I have a question for you, Mike, in regards to the impetus of Fuel, right? Because I joined Fuel just over 3 years ago, and I saw a lot of high level people in there, and I was in a space in my kind of career where it was like I needed to get around those high level operators. What was the transition from, like, Mike the investor, right, doing all these deals, having success, doing all of that, and then getting to a space where it's like, hey, let me focus on moving maybe away from investing being the core business and creating like this really cool community where high level people can get together? How did all that play itself out?
Yeah. So it was kind of it was like it basically was an evolution from coaching more new investors. So I've coached like hundreds and hundreds of people directly, and probably thousands indirectly, one way or another. But for me, it was like, the failure rate is pretty high. There's a lot of people, there's a very small percentage of people that get started in real estate investing that actually start doing deals. Right. And I always loved, like, pouring into those people, and it gave me more joy of the people that are actually doing what you told them to do. Right. And then the more I was around, other high achievers, that I just realized what I really like to do is be around my peers. Like, I like to coach new people, but at the end of the day, when you're coaching newbies, the challenge is that 90% of them are not going to do what you say. Right. And there's just, I value action takers, for one. And it's not like, this is the truth, man. And you guys are examples of that. There's a ton of people that are in Investor Fuel that have accomplished way more than I've accomplished. And so I appreciate the friendships. I appreciate all that. But for me, Investor Fuel was a way to put people together and connect people, right? Not necessarily me be the coach, which is not really, I've got opinions on everything. You guys know that. Yeah. But it's not me being the coach. It's me helping be the collaborator that's putting people together, right? I've always been a connector. I've always been a connector. I have this story that we don't have time for today, like having a fake ID when I was like 16 and throwing all these keg parties. And I really just did it to, like, bring people together, but from that, I've always been the guy that's pulling people together. And honestly, it inspires me to be around entrepreneurs that are, like, going all in all the time. And so I think once I realized that fulfills me and kind of fuels me, no pun intended, I guess, to pull people together that are entrepreneurs, that are willing to take risks, that are betting on themselves, that are kind of going all in all the time. There's nothing that I love more than that.
I know you mentioned at the beginning that you said lots of people, I think you said 90% of people that get started, they don't do it. They just can't get over the hump. We are probably going to get some newer listeners, right? People that get interested in real estate. Why do you think most people want to do it and they just can't do it? What's stopping that 90%, like, getting over to be, the other 10% that do find success?
Yeah, I think, and that's a made up number, but it's probably not far off, right? So
yeah, no, I would agree with it. Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of people that don't want it bad enough. Like, a lot of the people that I've known, and you guys know, my Flip Nerd podcast was actually like the 6th real estate investing podcast ever. So when I launched it, it's actually right at Christmas time. It's going to be a 10-year anniversary. Over 1,500 video podcasts on Flip Nerd, which we don't do all that consistently anymore. Now I do the Investor Fuel podcast, but I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of high achievers, right? And there's a common theme there. There's a couple things you hear all the time, like a couple of the most common ones: reference to Rich Dad, Poor Dad, like the blah 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 blah. And then I read this book, that comes up all the time. And then another one is that people just hit some sort of rock bottom, like they've been trying to do it and then they failed and something happened. And next thing you know, they're living in their car or they had to move back home with their parents or whatever. Like a common theme is that people take action after they have enough pain, right? And so for me, I never lived in my car and I wasn't in as much pain as some of the people that I've interviewed on my show over the years. But I was at a point where I was fairly newly married. We've been married for a couple of years. We had a new baby. I effectively lost my job again. And it was just kind of like, I was at this point where it's like failure is not an option that I can accept, right? And I think there's a lot of people that they like the idea of real estate investing, but it ends up being harder than they thought. There's no immediate gratification. I mean, this isn't Amazon, right? And they still have a plan B, which is just, I don't really like my job, but at least I'm getting a consistent paycheck. There's just not enough pain there. There's a little too much comfort. Or they're not willing to invest in themselves. Ultimately, they think this should just be free. Well, I can just go read some forums or watch YouTube. It's like all the information's out there, but there's no accountability and there's no kind of blueprint unless you hire a coach or a mentor or get a part of a system, or unless you're like super disciplined, which very few are at the end of the day.
Well, so I got go ahead.
I was just say, going back to the reasons why most people don't make it. Well, what do you think for the newer person listening? I know we all three have our own opinions. I'd be curious to hear yours. Like, what do you think, besides mindset, besides like, what is like the best strategy in your opinion to help somebody get started, get deals, and keep that momentum going?
Yeah, I think a couple of like tips, right? One is just partner with somebody that's already been doing it. Because at the end of the day, you can kind of borrow their confidence and they'll hold your hand, and maybe you're splitting the profit, but at least you're doing deals and you see it happen, right? And then, because if you're doing it all on your own and you're like, I don't want to split my profit with anybody, it's like, just think of it as a cost of the education, which, by the way, will be better than any college education you could pay for, right? And so just surrounding yourself with or partnering with people that do it now, because you climb the learning curve way faster. And it's not just the learning curve, it's the like confidence curve, because your confidence, like every day you're trying to get started, you have people chirping in your ear, like your family members, friends, coworkers that are like, man, this isn't the right time to get started. Like they're just saying all this stuff that's planting all these seeds in your mind that this won't work. And it's because it doesn't happen fast. And honestly, when I first started, even though we literally rented an office, we had hired an admin. We went all in. It took me 4 months to buy my first house, but every single day from the time you commit to it to the time you actually do a deal, there's doubt introduced in your mind. This isn't really going to work. And even after you do a deal, then you're like, man, is it going to take me 4 months to do another one? And you're just like constantly battling these demons that are telling you to take an easy path to something else. Right. And so it's just all the stuff in your mind that tells you that you got lucky, or you're not going to get lucky, or the timing is wrong, and the timing's never right, honestly. And so, but anyway, to answer your question, I think it's really just surrounding yourself with people that are doing it now, whether that's paying for coaching or partnering with somebody, or, I tend to think masterminds are more for the pro investor than the newbies, even though people throw that word around all the time. But it's really just immersing yourself in it and not willing to accept anything other than, actually doing deals, because until you do the deals, you don't think it's possible.
Do you see it as a natural progression to get past that imposter syndrome, Mike? Because you've been around so many different people and have probably observed this, right? So to go from this space where you're at, where even if you get a handful of deals under your belt, I think it took me 2 or 3 years before I really mentally turned a corner. And there wasn't one specific thing that happened. I think I just shifted and I realized, okay, I didn't get lucky and just flipped 60 houses. Like, I think I feel like I know what I'm doing now, right? Is there something that you see that happens, or is it just time in the business and eventually they just get over the hump?
Dude, I flipped hundreds of houses. I'm a GP in a few hundred million of multifamily. I've been podcasting for 15 years, over 1,500 shows. I run probably the top mastermind in the country for real estate investors. I have imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Like I feel like you
Right.
I feel like you never get over that. There's always something
Yeah.
of like, you're not good enough, or you're lucky, or whatever. I mean, I think that's what fuels us as entrepreneurs sometimes, is like always worried that somebody's going to take it all away from you. Right.
Yeah. It's a great
So I
answer.
think that fuels everybody a little bit. Now, could you drop me in any city in America and I could become one of the biggest house flippers there? Like, I'm confident of that I could do that. Right. But I'll still always be questioning, like, when am I going to get my next deal? Or like, it's just how it is. I don't know how, and some of it's personal. I mean, some people appear to be really confident, but personally, they're probably battling whether they're good enough, or they have these, unrealistic expectations about that someday I'm going to feel like I belong. When if you get too comfortable, then complacency sets in, and you probably will be the start of the downturn,
Exactly. Mike, what is like the biggest trait that you've seen across all the investors you've been around that like makes the ultra successful ones? Because like there's killers in fuel, and you've seen a ton of them. So like, what is like that trait or those couple traits that you've seen over the last, like, what is it, 10 years?
Yeah, we just had our 6-year anniversary for Investor Fuel, but yeah, I would say, it's being willing to invest in yourself, right? And not like looking for some immediate return, because everything we're playing now, for everybody that's on this call, and probably a lot of folks listening, we're playing the long game now. Like, this isn't about survival anymore. This is about something bigger, right? So being willing to invest today and be a farmer for something that you might not harvest for a year to 10 years or more, right? It's just that willingness to invest in your future, not like, I'm going to invest some today and I want immediate return tomorrow, right? And I think it's being a huge giver. At the end of the day, that's part of our culture at Investor Fuel, is sharing everything I know, because I know I'm going to get it back tenfold one way or another. And back to that, I don't expect an immediate return, but I know I'll get it over time if I keep investing in sharing my knowledge with other people. And you guys are, I mean, Jason's like a huge giver in the group. Like, he shares so much, and I, I can't speak for him, but I think he would say he's gotten a lot back. Right. And so those are two of the big things, I think. Right. And I think, when you're in a group like ours, just the confidence to see what's possible. Like, there are people in the group, there's guys like Armando that you guys are going to have coming up soon. He's a beast, but you don't know it until somebody tells you, because he won't even tell you that he's a beast. Like,
drag it
he
out
has
of
so
him.
much experience. You have no idea that guy has flipped thousands of houses. And if you asked him, what do you do? He's like, well, I do some real estate stuff. It'd be like, so like, he would like, not sell himself in any way.
Yeah.
And there's more people in the group like that, right? It's like, there's guys in the group doing 800 deals a year, but they won't tell you that. You just hear it you're like, what? They never told me that. But it's just, a little bit of modesty there, probably back to the fear that somebody could take it all away at any moment,
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. So for those that are listening, that might be starting out, they're not living in, the mindset of having abundance right now. It's hard to see the future because you're just living in survival right now. And I think that's, I'm assuming we've all experienced, I know I experienced it. You're just so focused on getting that next deal, and you lose sight sometimes of really what will help accelerate your results is by, like you said, Mike, surrounding yourself around other people, by actually giving, even though you might not think you have enough to give, by actually giving and providing value to other people. That will help accelerate your growth and create an abundance environment for you. And you, again, Mike, you said it, go add value to somebody else who's already where you want to be. That will help pull you up so much faster. I just had this conversation with one of my students today, who he's in a situation where there's another successful investor. He's just started working with him, and he was kind of talking through mentally how to think about it and how he should feel about it. I'm like, dude, you have an incredible opportunity. Somebody who's already established, spend the next year at a bare minimum giving everything you've got. You're going to help him, accelerate and grow, you're going to help yourself. You're going to borrow his credibility, and you guys are going to both come out winning a lot more than if you just try to do it on your own. So I think for anybody listening, I just wanted to repeat what you said. That's such a valuable lesson. And I know you're probably thinking, God, I just need this next deal. I need to pay these bills. But get around other people that are already thinking abundantly and borrow that energy.
Yeah, I think, one thing is it's easier once you become successful in business, right? And there's some confidence in that you are not worried about feeding the family anymore. Like, it's not about paying the bills. It's about something bigger. And once you get to that point, you're willing to take more risks, right? You're willing to bet on yourself over a longer period of time. And I think, for those that are getting started, maybe you don't have the ability to feed the family yet and you need something more immediate, but you have to find a way to kind of conjure that feeling up of like, I'm not going to get immediate gratification. I'm going to work towards that, but you need to find a way to, not quit next week if you don't get your first deal in a week. Like, it's just not realistic for that to happen anyway. I mean, has it happened? Do you talk to people? Yes, it happens, but that's like super rare. Right. And so I think people have to be willing to, pay their dues, right? At the end of the day, whether that's time for yourself or working with somebody else and giving up half the pie or most of the pie or whatever, like, just get involved and see what's possible. I think that's one of the other things, even about the mastermind, people that are operating at a high level, is there's people that will look at, like, for example, Jason probably thinks he has tons of upside from here. Like, he's not tapped out. Right. But there's people that look at Jason and they want to be like Jason, and they're like, well, if that guy can do it, I can do it. And I think Jason would say that too. Like, if I did it, you could do it. And so we just look at each other and we see what's possible. Right. And it's not necessarily bigger volume guys. It's just like, wow, that guy cracked the code on text message marketing, or that it could be like a function, right? Like, that guy figured out how to do this thing, or this person's like really good at hiring and recruiting people. It's just like, functions inside of the business of finding people that have what you want. It's not overall success necessarily. It's just like how to do a thing and go figure out how to do that just like them.
We got a Jason fanboy comment in here.
Post it. There we go. Yeah.
If you didn't know, Mike, Jason is so famous in Fresno that he can't go outside of the house.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I'm the one that made that comment, by the way. I don't know.
Mike, with the burner account, Mike posted. I appreciate you, buddy. Yeah, thanks, man. The cool thing for me about Fuel, when I joined Fuel, was that sometimes social media, you play that comparison game. You start looking at all these people, right? And you're like, damn, dude, this guy, Mike, he's got all of his shit together. He's got everything dialed. And then you see that across the board with high-level operators. And then you get in the room, and everybody's so honest and open and vulnerable in the group, right? We can get up and share, and people are struggling with all the same things I was struggling with, dude. And that was what I think was cool for me. It was cool to see that, just like you were saying right now, like, nobody has it all figured out. Everybody's struggling with the same problems, even as we kind of grow and reach these new plateaus where we think it's like everything is dialed. And sometimes I feel like, dude, the wheels can come off any minute. And it's nice to be able to share open and honestly with other people that are operating at that same level. And I took a lot away from that. So I think that's one of the biggest value components from the group for me.
And that's part of our culture too, is, and, I kind of beat that drum all the time of like, there's no ego allowed here because there's a bunch of rock stars here, and, there's no reason to do that. But it's just like, we learn most from our mistakes than the things that work right. Right. And I think we can learn even faster if we get to learn from each other's mistakes. So people have to be willing to share those mistakes. So the vulnerability thing is part of our culture. It's like, and it hit me one of the first times. This was probably our second or third meeting, like 5.5 years ago, when a guy in the group got up and said, like, I talked a little bit about it, but he got up and basically said, he's like, in front of a whole room, he's like, I think my wife's going to leave me. And it was like so like vulnerable for that guy to say that in front of 100+ people or whatever, and like everybody just poured into this guy. Right. And it was because he was at a point where it was kind of fragile, and maybe he shouldn't have left his job, and he got all these family responsibilities, and that guy's still in the group today. Right. And has a amazing business, but just to be able to feel like as an entrepreneur, you feel like there's no safe places. Right. to talk about what's really going on. And that's one of the beauties of our culture is like, if you got a problem, like, let's talk about it. Nobody's going to go, what happens here stays here. And what we talk about here, this is about fixing your issues, not patting each other on the back about how awesome you are at the end of the day. We can do that too. But like, if you don't like share what's not working, then you're going to miss out on a big opportunity.
Man, this is going to be one big fuel ad because I was going to hype up. I was just going to hype up the community because I still talk to a bunch of dudes from Fuel.
Yeah.
Like I still.
Well, that's not my intention. You guys we can change the subject if you guys want.
No, like I think it's great because.
But the point is like surrounding yourself with the people that we get you to the next level at the end of the day, right? Whether it's Investor Fuel or not. But
if you haven't looked into it, I strongly suggest you do, because you do need a community of people who can help push you and hold you accountable. I think is a big thing because like when they do those hot seats are going to really, really hold you accountable, and at least you're going to have to know your KPIs.
And I do think that we're fortunate in our market, and we're Stratton, Dean, and I drive this in Central California. We're fortunate where we create a community and events and all these things where we can have 150 people come to see Armando speak, right? And that's not normal in every single market, right? So if you don't have RIAs where they're very well attended and then you have to do whatever you need to do. And if that means going and joining a group like Fuel or something else, I think that's what you have to do, because getting around the right people and in proximity was a word that I heard you use earlier, Mike, was one of the big things that changed the trajectory of my business. You have to be around other people that are doing it so you can see Mike is just a normal guy. He's not Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg or anything like that. If he can do it, I can do it. You know what I mean? And I think that just that proof of concept, I think, is important. So yeah, if you're not around other people, do it now.
And you know, you're right. Like it's not common that there are a few markets that have, like Phoenix is pretty well known for having a bunch of like high level people that are collaborating. Dallas has been like that in the future, probably not as much as it used to be. But there's something to be said too for like getting out of your circle and going somewhere else where you just get these different perspectives, right?
Yeah.
Of, like what's out there. And so sometimes that takes getting out of your comfort zone and maybe even getting out of your market.
All right, real quick. Another Jason fanboy. I'd get Jason's autograph if I ran into him, man. And then someone's asking, what group is this? This group is called Investor Fuel. It's an amazing mastermind. I have a quick question. I want to take it in a completely different direction. You've worked so much with your wife. A lot of people, when they like get into this business, they bring their wife into it, and it's hard. It is hard working with your significant other, no matter what anybody tells you. Yeah. How have you and your wife been able to accomplish that for this long over these years? Because your wife is badass.
Yeah, she really is a secret weapon, you know. And now, so she's in the process of being retired right now, which is really cool after all these years. But it's kind of even bittersweet for her. Like it was always my passion, but she is very skilled in a lot of areas, like operationally and financially. And but even now, I know she has a little bit of a hard time letting go because you know, she appreciates all that this business has done for us and doesn't want to see something fall apart. But no, it's hard. I think it went from we went to business school together, but we met in business school, so we didn't go there together. We just met in the same program, and really didn't start dating till the end, and then got married about a year after grad school. And we had separate careers, right? And it just took like I said, me losing my job and her being in a job that she didn't love, us having a baby, and just like saying, let's just start this together. And so it's tough. I mean, it's tough. Like we've had lots of ups and downs. I wouldn't change it for the world, but there have definitely been times where it's had challenges for sure. Like we don't have enough time to talk about it all today, but I would say whether it's your spouse or any partner, because I've seen a lot of partnerships break up too, like over the years, I've seen a lot of them, right? It usually comes from the reason all relationships fail, like bad communication and like not good expectations of what you expect of each other. Right. And so you have to have clear roles of who does what and communicate on, you know, are we good here? Is there something that I'm not doing that I should be doing? And vice versa. Like having, you know, it's kind of funny that we get like a tune up on our car or oil change, like every 3,000 miles or whatever, but regularly in our relationships, like there's like no maintenance plan, you know, just like when the car breaks down, we'll address it then. Right. When the relationship breaks down, then we'll deal with it. And so I think it's just important to kind of have clear expectations of who does what. And I don't know.
Is it difficult for you? One of the challenges that Jen and I have is that real estate has always been my thing, right? It's my passion. I love it. I can eat, breathe, sleep, talk it all day long. I never have to stop. She is not into real estate like that. She understands that it's the vehicle that's going to get us to where we go. She understands that it provides for our lifestyle, but she just doesn't have the same interest in it as I do. Is your dynamic with Lindsay the same thing? And
Very
like,
similar.
if so, like, how do you like overcome that, wanting to do real estate all the time, but also, try to find time to do the maintenance that you need in your marriage and in your family life?
Yeah, I'll say, just looking back of challenges we've had and things like that, I would say, like, not that I gave this to her, but as long as my Lindsay has a lot of habits, like we kind of joke, like she has tons of not habits, hobbies, tons of hobbies. My hobby is like more business, it's like, let me break something and then so I have to fix it. I'm like the cat that like nobody will play with. And I got to start like batting that ball around to like play with myself, So she's had lots of hobbies and lots of outlets. And I think that's been important for her to be able to do what she wants when she wants and have time to do that. Right. But I think like, we talk a lot. I talk a lot about the cash flow quadrant, like going from that self-employed box to the business owner box. Right. Because a lot of people in real estate are stuck, even if they move from the E box as an employee to being self-employed and having their own business, right? They're usually trapped in a job. It's a job.
Yeah.
And so you don't really have a business unless you can support paying yourself or paying somebody else to do your job for you. And so that's one of the cases for scale. Like we talk a lot about scaling your business up, but it's not necessarily like, hey man, I need to go from a Maserati to a Lambo. For some people, that's what they want, but it's really scaling your business is about giving you the dry powder you need, which is profit, to be able to buy your time back. Right. And in some instances that might be buying your spouse's time back and giving them the time they need to do what they want. So I definitely won't say I'm an expert because we've had our challenges. Right. But I have an amazing relationship with my wife. And I could have never built what we've built without her. And we have this joke that we never even would have bought a single house without me because she's very risk averse. And so we have this joke of like, we never would have bought one house without me. And I would have had all sorts of cash flow issues like a month in without her. Right. And so it really took both of us coming together. But I think it's just a matter of, I shouldn't give marriage advice for sure, but it's really just a matter of everybody understanding what they want and when do they want out, because I think a lot of folks like us got in this to build a better life. And the last thing you want to do is in the process of building a life, let the business tear your relationship apart, because that will all have been for naught. Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I have a different, completely off topic question again. What marketing channels are you seeing are working the best across fuel? Because like someone needs to start some type of newsletter that just mails out the monthly KPIs of being like, hey, here's the industry average.
It's not a bad idea, actually. Yeah.
Bro, I've been thinking about this. Like, do I want to start a fucking newsletter of the monthly KPIs for everybody? But so like, what are you seeing that's working? Because like texting is dead. I know for a fact right now, calling is still very, very hard for us to get quality leads and get it to like not have to fidget with it a lot.
Right.
Obviously, you're a big mailman. You're a big PPC man. Shout out the investor machine. So what are you seeing like across the board in fuel?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's more for me, it's not just fuel, but Investor Machine, which is probably the largest done for you lead gen agency in the country right now. So honestly, the ROI on inbound lead generation is 200 to 300% higher than outbound. So it's
That's
mail, pay-per-click, SEO, TV, all those channels. Right. And the thing is they all fit together. Like mail and TV and SEO or mail and TV feed SEO. Right.
Yeah.
So if people think, oh, I'm getting a lot of SEO leads, it's like, well, they probably didn't just find you. Like some other vehicle, they got a piece of mail in their hand, or they saw you on TV, and then they went and Googled you, right? Which is what all of us would do. Like whenever you do anything that's of high value, you go research it or at least Google it online, right? And so all these things fit together. And when somebody contacts you, they've vetted you out to some level, or they've at least raised their hand versus outbound texting or cold calling. Like you said, texting is dead. Cold calling is tougher than ever right now. Right. And so the problem is a lot of people use when you go back to KPIs, like I've been beating this drum a lot lately, is people look at KPIs that I think are ultimately worthless. Like cost per lead is interesting, but it's not that important. And even cost per contract is not that important. You could take two deals, one that you got through texting or cold calling, and you're going to have the cheapest lead, right? But you're not, first off, with cold calling, you might convert 1 out of 50 or 1 out of 70 leads, right?
You're in like the 1 to 50.
It's a really bad conversion. Mail might be 1 out of 8 or 10, right? And so what that looks like artificially is that mail, if done right, and pay-per-click are some of the highest cost per leads and the highest cost per contract, but the profits are the highest on the back end. And that's all that matters. So, I've been beating this drum of ROAS, return on ad spend. I put $1 in, how many dollars do I get back? Over a long period of time. Like you can't look at that over a month and say, well, I'm not getting a very good return on my investment in 1 month. It's like the person you're marketing to has been distressed for 30 years. So 1 month is nothing, right? It's a blip.
Yeah.
And so you have to just keep tapping people on the shoulder. It's like, I know you're distressed. I know you're distressed. I know you're distressed. You're not saying that, but the truth is they're just waiting for one more issue to happen that's going to push them over the edge. I mean, at the end of the day, like I don't want these issues to happen to the type of people we buy houses from, but life happens. Like they make bad decisions. They have health issues. They get divorced. Landlords have tenants that tear their houses up. I don't want any of those things to happen to anybody, but this is life. And when it does happen, I want to be there to support them. So inbound lead generation by far. Back to your question earlier about what do I see that's successful? It's those that embrace that are not trying to find ways to spend the least on marketing. The people that are trying to spend the most on marketing are the people that fucking crush it in this industry at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And they're asking constantly, how can I spend more? How can I spend more? Because go back to corporate America. Like there's no multi-billion-dollar corporations that are trying to find out, like Coca-Cola isn't like, should we just advertise in movie theaters and maybe kill all the TV stuff? They're not looking at that, but real estate investors are trying to find ways to cut stuff,
Yeah.
Big companies are trying to find ways to spend more.
Yeah.
Like, how do I get out there more and more and more? Because that's the name of the game.
That's a good point. And I think
that is a really good point.
Institutionalized, like in the investor space, because you got Dean's hater ass down there buying all the TV slots so none else can get them.
He's bought up the whole market under.
Yeah.
So you got that. So PPC mail, and are you guys talking a lot in fuel about like, okay, what's your cash conversion cycle? Like now that like things are starting to get a little bit wonky. And again, you have like the most data for everybody. What are you seeing in the market? What are other people going through in business, and how are they pivoting right now? As Fresno has been fine, from what I understand, but a lot of other markets is kind of wonky. I know.
Yeah,
Texas is.
It's weird. I would say that there's this common theme. There's actually a big divide too. There's people that are having the best years they've ever had, and there's people that are out of business or moved on to something else, right? And so, of the people that are kind of going all in and betting on themselves, like they're having a great business. It feels it's harder, right? The grind is harder. They might be doing less volume, but their profits per deal are up. And so that's a general theme of volumes are down or they're harder to find. Some people that are doing really well have stepped up and they're spending more on advertising. And I think another, fairly common theme is they're probably retailing more, whether they are doing a little less wholesaling and moving more wholetailing or full on rehabs, just because they're like, if I'm doing less deals, I got to squeeze more juice out of that fruit that I picked. Right. So those are some common themes I'm seeing. For those that are sitting on the sidelines, though, if anybody's listening to this and like kind of pulled back on stuff, the reality is you're not, let's say from a lead gen perspective or really any perspective, you pull back right now, let's just say the people that say, I'm going to pull back in December because it's the holidays, right? The problem is that doesn't screw you up in December. It screws you up in February and March, right? Because everything we're doing right now to generate leads or improve our business is for the future. It's not for tomorrow. It's for like a ways further out. And you have this funnel and this sales pipeline that's feeding your business if you're continuously marketing. So it's interesting for me for a long time, from the 10 or 12 years that I was really heavy in the single family space, we always like doubled down in November and December because we knew we would have a killer Q1, and we knew that a whole bunch of people are pulling back. So I'm just stealing market share is all I'm doing, right? And when you realize that there's a theme there of a lot of people pulling back, it's like, well, I'm going to take their spot. And so there's a lot of that going on. At the end of the day, the markets are tougher, but there's still a lot of activity happening in all of our markets. This isn't about maintaining your market share. This is about stealing market share.
Do you think, Mike, that the difference between the people that are having some of their best years ever versus the ones that are like teetering on the verge of like whether or not they're going to stay in the business is it a mental thing? They're scared, and then that fear is like poisoning every decision that they make? Or is it a function of the market that they're in? Or is it a combination? Like, can you pinpoint like a reason why that's happening?
It's a combination. The market is harder. Let's not make any mistake about that. But it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you think, well, the market's kind of bad right now, it's not a good time for X or Y, right? That's a self-fulfilling prophecy for sure. But I think the people that said, I'm going to use this opportunity to steal market share and just step up, like a lot of my competition's gone, or, and I see, I don't know if you guys get mailers. You have a bunch of rentals, Jason. Like I get less mailers than I used to and here's what I'll say is there's people that have been mailing me for years and years and years that are some of the big dogs in the DFW market, and they just never stop mailing because they eventually want me to crack, right? I mean, and that's what I believe. But all the like one-off postcards that I get, like were from the newbie real estate investors, like those are gone.
No more.
They just stopped, right? And you can tell the newbie postcards because they look like shit and they print it on one side or misspelled a bunch of stuff or whatever, but those are just gone. And those are the people that are in fear.
Bro. All right. So we got that. What's your new agency do besides mail? Because then I want you to, let's talk really good about the niche stuff. Because that's what you've really narrowed down on with machine and everything else you do. Because even with your mail and everything else, it's not just mail. This is very, very targeted marketing.
Yeah.
To where it used to be everybody's like, yeah, go mail high equity. You'll make some money.
Right,
you really can't do that anymore. In any really sort, it performs, but you got to have your niche stuff if you want to get good returns.
Yeah. Yeah. So Investor Machine, we've evolved. So we've been around for coming up on 4.5 years. Honestly, up until a few months back, we were pretty much all mail and skip tracing. But our crown jewel is, there's a lot of what we call broad data. So not to knock anything, but if you were to go to PropStream or ListSource, so many sources, you can download lists, but they're usually age, equity, kind of high level information. They don't have local data that's only recorded at the county level, such as probates, recent divorce, mowing liens, ISD liens, meth contamination reports, like all sorts of stuff that only happens at the county level. And in every county in America, it's done differently, right? So there's no national source that has that, and other than us. We don't sell our data; we just execute it for people. But so we take the broad data and then we append it with about 40 other lists of stuff that we think are red flags. Like, are they 2 years behind on taxes? Somebody just filed for divorce. Like all these things, basically we assign a point to it. So in every market where we have customers in America, we have a list from top to bottom who's the most distressed and the least distressed. And it's updated daily. Like we're constantly updating it. And there's nobody that's as good as us at list hygiene for sure, right? But then the important part is we execute it for everybody. So it's just done like clockwork. So a big part of marketing is just consistency. And a lot of real estate investors and all entrepreneurs probably aren't consistent at many things. Like you're spinning a lot of plates and you're on to the next thing. Like, oh my God, we forgot to put the marketing in. And when they go order their own mail, they're usually just send it to the same list as last time. I haven't had a chance to pull any new data. And right. And so there's all these like little things. And in this business, like you don't have to be twice as good as somebody to like the differentiation between getting by and like killing it. You have to be like 10% better. Like you have to be a little bit better. Right. So those little things matter at the end of the day. And so one of the evolutions that we had over the past, year with the market downturn is that we were very fragile by just providing mail, and skip tracing is, pretty much died on the vine for the most part. So we recently launched pay-per-click, SEO, Facebook ads, And we have a couple of other things coming too, to have more channels, because if people pulled back on mail and we didn't have anything else available, they're like, I'm just going to focus on pay-per-click. Then we're like, okay, see ya. We didn't have anything else there. So now we have more channels. And the cool thing is we do stuff that nobody else that I'm aware of does, is we can actually take those custom audiences that we create for mail and create custom audiences on Facebook and pay-per-click and market to the same people that we're sending mail to, that we're hitting from kind of land, sea, and air. Right. And so, in a nutshell, that's what we do for kind of the pro investor.
So I'm curious, since you have experience across all the different marketing channels, do you feel like for someone to have success, they need to be doing all of those different ones at the same time? Or can someone find success by just focusing in and starting with one?
You have to start with one. I think it depends on your budget. Like, you need to kind of not max out, but you need to have a decent footprint in a channel before you go into a new channel. But they all do fit together. And that's why it makes more sense to have a bigger budget, because you're just, like, I don't know what you guys' TV watching habits are. I watch Netflix and a bunch of other stuff, but I watch like no network TV, and I haven't for years. Right. And so a TV ad I wouldn't even see it. Right. If you call me, if your number's not in my contacts, like, it's going straight to voicemail, and I'll never answer it ever. I see every text. Right. So there's different marketing channels that every distressed seller out there are going to appeals more to them, or they might not even see it in some instances. Right. And so I think that's why sometimes we think about what we want. We're like, well, I see all my texts, so text would be great for me. But everybody's different, right? And by the way, we're generally dealing with a older population that's in financial distress of some sort. And we're dealing, I kind of said in the past, I hope to never have to sell my house to a dude like me, right? So I'm not my avatar customer, and none of you guys are either. And so sometimes we have to say, like, I'm not advertising to me, I'm advertising to somebody else.
Such
and
a
just
good
kind of drop the whole, like, here's what I would want to happen, because you're not advertising for you. Right. But I do think you can't, like, for example, you wouldn't go, I'll give like an extreme example here. You wouldn't like handwrite 50 postcards and spend $500 on Facebook advertising. And like, you need to probably spend enough to get 1 or 2 deals a month out of a channel before you go to the next channel. Right. Otherwise you're just, because here's what happens with real estate investors, back to the immediate gratitude, and probably all entrepreneurs, is you're advertising enough in a channel to buy a house every 3 months. Like, let's say you're in a market and you have to spend $6,000 on advertising on average to buy a deal, but you spend 2 a month. Well, what happens is, you're advertising enough to buy it every 3 months. But on month 2, you're like, this channel's not working. I'm going to try something different. Right. It's like, well, you set it up for failure to the beginning. You didn't advertise enough to even get a deal out of that channel. And then you make some gut feel that it's not working. It's like, well, it's not working because you didn't do it right.
Well, talk about how long you need to be like advertising to actually get a deal. Like, mail is a year-long game. Calling was 90 days at least. I mean, PPC I'd say is the fastest. I don't know what your guys' PPC like conversion is, but it takes a long time of spending money to actually get it. YouTube lies too.
This is a broad statement, but I generally tell people, like, unless you can advertise in a channel for 6 months and expect no return on that investment, you shouldn't go into that channel, because it does take time and nothing is perfect. You're gonna pull some levers and tweak some knobs as you go forward, right? You're gonna make some mistakes. There's some obvious things you're gonna realize, and it's just consistency. Like, you guys have all gotten deals this way, where somebody contacts you and they're like, "Man, I've been getting your letters, your postcards, I've seen you on TV for a long time," and they knew you planted a seed that this deal would come. And so you have to kind of plant those seeds where someday they're probably going to have to call you, and you've just conditioned them to know that you're the guy that they're calling, or the woman that they're going to call when the time comes. Right. It's not that you can't send out one round of mailers and get a deal from it. I mean, but that's kind of, you'd be lucky if that happened. For the most part. The types of people that call us have probably needed to call us for years, and it just takes them building up that trust one way or another through marketing. Like, that's some of the branding parts of marketing, is like, this brand that I like that the person's, the picture of their family on there, or I would never sell my house to somebody that looks like this, or, so it's just really a matter of kind of planting those seeds that are getting harvested down the line. And 6 months is really a minimum that any channel could do that with, I believe. Now, are there the people that are like, I called 30 people and I'm taking the highest offer. I mean, that's going to happen, but you're never going to get, I mean, if you win a deal and they're getting 30 offers, like you lost, my friend. You know?
You're the loser.
Yeah. I always have this funny example of a guy of an appointment we went on. This is like several years back now, where my acquisitions guy, he's like pulled up and there's all these other cars there. It's like, I don't know who these guys were. And all of a sudden the seller like pulled into the driveway and he walked into the front with a clipboard and he's like, the auction will now begin. And they're like, what? Wait, what? He's like, I just turned around and left because if you win that, you're a loser.
Yeah, it's over.
From like direct to seller marketing standpoint, Mike, I know we're talking, I think this year there's definitely been this shift towards more inbound marketing. Inbound marketing obviously costs more, right? And it may be out of reach for a newer investor. What I always liked about texting and cold calling is it's like a lower budget way for somebody that could combine some hustle and a little bit of money to get a deal, right? And now with a lot of the changes that the carriers have made and just like regulation that's happening in that industry, that stuff's going away. Is there something on the horizon that you're seeing for the newbie that doesn't have $3 or $4 grand a month to spend on mail or whatever inbound marketing channel that there is? Like, what are those people going
Yeah,
to
and
do?
I don't disagree. If you don't have a lot of money, you've got to use hustle, right? And once you get to a point to where you don't have a lot of time, you got to use money. There's always like bandit signs and door knocking and stuff like that. And I probably knock it sometimes because I deal more with the pro investor, right? But if you're a new investor, you got to do whatever you got to do to get out of the gate. And so I'm not here to knock any of those things. They're just typically not strategies that are common in a scaled up business because they're hard to scale, right? They're just hustle tactics. And even if you're doing the cold calling and texting yourself, like there's only so many hours in a day. And when you start, the dirty little secret on those types of tactics is when you start to outsource it, it's a revolving door of hiring people and training them because it takes a strong will for somebody to get told to F off all day long and just stick with the job. They're like, I love getting told to F off 100 times a day. Like there's not many people that enjoy that. Right. So even though it's cheaper, how much effort are you putting into building the team, rebuilding the team, training, like all the crap you have to do with making sure your numbers aren't getting marked as spam, change the numbers, like all that stuff. It's a lot of work to do those things. Right. But look, at the end of the day, I think if you have to hustle your way into a deal, I mean, honestly, if you're willing to rehab, be careful that you don't overpay, but buy from a wholesaler and accept the fact that you're going to make less money on that deal, but at least you're doing a deal and you can learn from the rehab process. Right. And so just find a way to make it happen one way or another, or partner with somebody and you're both going to, you don't have to become like business partners, just become deal partners. Like, let's do our first 5 deals together and let's get there faster. And maybe we won't make as much per deal, but our odds of hitting success are twice as good as they would have been if I just do it myself,
Well, like, I don't know why more people who are flippers aren't all over social, because you could just get all the deal flow. I don't think Armando does any outbound marketing, and Armando buys the most houses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Real quick, though, I got to bring this up. Dean, we can't ever let you stop doing TV ads, because if Jason takes that over, bro.
Man, can you imagine the autograph line? Imagine.
Bro, he will rule the city of Fresno. It'll be insane, bro. We'll have stalkers at his door. It'll be nuts.
Every time I go to fuel, I stop at Tony's booth and I'm like, hey, has Dean not re-upped his contract yet? And so we'll just wait and see, dude. Yeah, that's it. Got to get me on TV here soon.
Mike, thank you so much for coming on. What are some parting words and where can people find out more about you?
I do. I'm probably spend too much time on Facebook, so you can check me out there. No, I appreciate the opportunity. At the end of the day, look, I think everybody that's on this call would say this: real estate investing has changed my life, right? And it has never been easy. And I think if you're the type of person that's been waiting for the right time, the time is now, right? I mean, it would have been great to start 10 years ago, 20 years ago, but if you didn't do that, start now. Don't try to time the market. Here's the reality is the types of people that we buy houses from that are dealing with a challenge in their life, death, divorce, inheritance, problem rentals. None of those things follow market cycles at all.
That's right.
There's nobody that's like, man, I got really unhealthy when the market took a downturn. No, it has nothing to do with the timing of the market, right? So there's people that need our help like all the time.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to time it, you're really just making an excuse to postpone what it is you're trying to accomplish, right? So this is it's a hard business, but you can see from the folks on here, it's absolutely changed our lives. It's changed my family tree for generations to come, right? And so that's the type of opportunity that's here, and that's not going away. It doesn't mean things aren't going to get harder, but what's worthwhile that's easy? Like nothing, right? And if you're thinking about getting out of the business or you moved out of the business, you're just going to move to something else that is eventually going to get hard as well, because everything gets hard eventually, right?
Yeah.
And so there's not some grass is greener land over there where you can jump into something else that's going to be easy forever. Everything that's easy, it's just a matter of time before it gets hard, right? So if you want to do this, stop making excuses and do it.
Love it.
Hell yeah. Thank you. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. My name is Strat Daddy. Down there at the bottom right is Captain America, the protector of the television. And we will keep the TVs in Fresno safe. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys on Thursday. Don't miss out on the meetup. What time is it at?
6
p.m.
Yep.
6 p.m. What hotel do you know?
So it's at the Wyndham Hotel in Visalia, November 16th, Thursday at 6 p.m. You guys can go to Central California Real Estate Investing Group. If you catch this before the meetup, you can RSVP there. Would love to see you. These events are free. We pour our hearts into them. And this is what it's all about. Like, these relationships are where they're going to take you to the next level. And we're going to keep you energized and borrowing that belief from other people that are in the business. So make sure you're at that event. You don't want to miss it.
Hell yeah. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys Thursday.